This is Firebase. Good evening. We are glad that you've chosen to be with us tonight. I'm your host, Gary French. On tonight's show, we'll be talking with a gentleman who, in full disclosure, is a friend of mine. He's a pastor, but he's also working for a company that deals with voting machines. I found that very interesting when he started talking about the voting machines. And let me say it like this as well. When we consider voting machines here in the United States, we're a little concerned about that. For me, we need to know that we can trust the voting machines. And I don't know about you, but folks, I've been very disillusioned. I've been extremely disillusioned about if my vote actually counts. And of course, that brings up a whole another issue about, can we trust the voting machines? Can we have confidence in the voting machines? Can we know that our vote is valid? I certainly hope so. Let me just welcome Pastor Bryon Mills into our show tonight. Brother, thanks for being on with me tonight.
Well, thank you, Dr. French, for having me on. It's a privilege to be here.
It's all my pleasure. You're such a great man of God, and I really appreciate the way that you've taken the stand for Christ. But before the show, we were talking about HARP. If you don't mind, I'm not trying to give that company that you work for a plug, but would you share with our audience just a little bit what HARP really is?
Yeah, so HARP is a company based in Lexington, Kentucky. I have been working for them probably since the maybe 1996, almost, I guess, 20 some years. And so what they do is they provide the voting machines, the software, the ballots, the personnel to most of the counties in Kentucky, a good number in Indiana and also Tennessee. And what we do is they train us to go out to a particular county and make sure that the machines are up and running. If one has an issue or a problem, it's our job as a technician to go out to that precinct as quickly as possible, solve the problem, which is usually very remote, very, very slight, and just keep the machines up and running. And then we help to tally the results and get those turned in. We'll actually help the clerks get them turned in to the state clerk. So that's kind of what we do. Been doing that. Sure. A pastor asked me to do this about 20 some years ago and been doing it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
You know, with everything that we've had on the news from the previous election, I've not been convinced that either here in Kentucky or on the national scene, I've just not been convinced. And this is no slight on you or anybody that works in that industry. I've just not been convinced that the machines, especially those that say Dominion, that they can be trusted. How can we, as people who earnestly want to vote, how can we have that assurance that there's not been some kind of manipulation in there, Byron?
Sure, and that's a great question. I can't speak for Dominion machines. Those are not the ones that we use here. We've gone through 3 different generations of machines from 1996 until now. And I can say this, number one, the machines that I have been a technician over for these years are never connected to the internet. There's no way to personally manipulate the vote in those. When they store a vote count in these machines, they're stored in like 3 or 4 locations. So, you've got several places where the machines store a vote. And not only that, in Kentucky, most of the counties now, it is a paper ballot fed into a scanner. So they've got the paper ballot to verify what the machine says.
Sure.
And then the results are put onto a disk, a thumb drive, given to the county clerk, who immediately sends it to the state. I've watched that whole process, and there's no way that a foreign government or anybody can manipulate it as far as Kentucky is concerned. Looking at it from the backside, seeing the backside of this, I've seen a lot of concern, a lot of integrity.
Just talking to you and knowing you, that gives me a certain degree of confidence in that. But I think we should never take anything, any election, any vote for granted. Have you seen that sense of, I guess here in Kentucky, maybe even nationwide, that sometimes people take that responsibility to vote just for granted?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I helped to do one of these elections in a county, Western Tennessee, last couple of weeks ago. And
Right.
the voter turnout was dismal. The voter turnout was absolutely rock bottom. And I thought, after all we had been through, Gary, that I just thought we would see an elevated number of people, but the apathy in that county was really bad.
Yeah. I spoke some weeks ago with John Graves from Fort Worth area with Million Voices. People recognize him. He's been on our program, our show, a number of times. He's seen him quite frequently on the Victory Channel. John is just a great guy. He says in the Dallas area, when they had the primary, only 10% of those people eligible to vote even bothered to vote. And yeah. I quote this statistic all the time. In 2012, over 25 million registered to vote Christians did not even bother to vote in the general election for president that year.
Wow.
The statistics tell us that, as you've already indicated, that a small percentage of people vote in the primary, and then we end up with not so good candidates because people have chosen not to vote. How do you think we can change that?
You know, that's a great question. And we've had that discussion for however many years I've been doing this in multiple counties. The county clerks are concerned about it. They would love to see. They've tried to educate the high school students. They've done awareness campaigns. The folks in Tennessee put ads out in the paper. It seems like they've tried to do all they know to do. And honestly, I think it's got to be something that's going to have to be a parent passing to a child. But if the parent's not interested, how's the child going to be? So we need to attack this at the school level. But then again, what teachers at school see the value? So that it's really a systemic, pardon the use of that word, problem.
Sure. You know, and it may be connected on this, Pastor, it may be connected that a lot of schools don't teach civics classes anymore. Right. They're more interested with Common Core, and you teach people just for the test in order they might pass the test. And when I was a kid, for sure, we had to learn. We had government classes, we had civic classes, we even had to have mock voting, how to go about voting, and we'd have people campaigning. And I guess here's the question: has it seemed to you that the farther we have removed from reading, writing, and arithmetic, that we have inculcated within the younger generation a lazy attitude towards voting? And since we don't teach about civics or the civic responsibility, they just don't bother to vote.
Yeah, I think that's true. I have two daughters-in-law. Both of them are educators. One's an educator at a school in Lexington, another one here in Mason County. And both of these daughters of mine have told me over and over the apathy that the kids don't want to turn in assignments. Well, give me a break. I actually have to turn this assignment in. One kid came up and said, I don't want to take the final. I don't feel like it. So can I just get a grade anyway? And then, when they
did,
but when they, look, Gary, when they've done that, I won't name the school, but when they did that, the administration came to my daughter-in-law and said, we had a parent complain, you can't do that. You've got to give them at least a C. One even plagiarized, and she said, that's a fail. And they said, no, you can't do that. You got to give them a break. So that's how far we've fallen. It's really bad. Yeah. You
know, I shall just say there's a mutual friend of ours who will say that we're raising kids that are dumber than hammers. And, and then we're stunned as to why they're that way.
Right.
What part do parents play in this, or has parents totally given responsibility over to the government-run school system, of which I just tell people flat out, get them out of the government-run school?
Absolutely. It's an indoctrination program, Gary, and we know that. And I've tried to convey that to my congregation. It is indoctrination from preschool on up. And it's not about education. It's about indoctrination. It's about social, emotional learning. And really what this is training young little Marxists to create a revolution. And unfortunately, that's where we're at with this. So, but then you have this negative attitude of, well, my vote doesn't matter anyway, so what does it matter? And we're passing that on to our kids. And let me say this, from the time they're grown now, my 3 kids were able to talk. We've talked politics, we've talked government. I didn't trust the school to train, of course, we homeschooled. So I didn't trust the schools to do that. In the process of homeschooling, we taught them government and history and all the response. We took them to the voting booth, Gary. We showed them how to do it, you know.
Awesome. Now, surely, you know, it sounds like you're just not a fan of critical race theory. You just, like, you're taking a stand here. You don't want your children to be indoctrinated with lies.
I am not. You know, and again, we could go real far with this, but again, critical race theory is just a fancy word for Marxism. You know, and you can go back to the Cultural Revolution of Red China. They had to train the young people to rebel against the traditions of the government, to turn all of that away. And that's what's happening now.
Byron, keep that thought right there. Friends, we're talking with Pastor Bryon Mills. We'll be chatting with him as we continue right after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Firebase. Glad you stayed with us. Talking this evening with Pastor Bryon Mills, and in the first segment, we talked about his involvement with a company called HARP. And here's the first thing I understood and I learned. The voting machines here, at least here in Kentucky, you can trust them. Is that pretty accurate? I tried to cut it real short there on that part, Pastor.
Yeah, you know, as far as I can see it as an insider, these people take their job very seriously. And I want to give a shout out. Of course, you know, you don't know everybody, but these clerks, man, they really want it to be right. As far as Kentucky, they're very conscientious. They want it to be right. That's their concern.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift gears and shift our direction real quick. In the first segment, we talked about voting integrity, and we hit about education system and talked about critical race theory. And you and I have spoken about that before in other shows, and I didn't want to go back down that memory lane, although we could. I want to talk about a couple of things, some big things that are before us right now. And I want to hit the baby food shortage that we're hearing about. My understanding, I did a show earlier today. My understanding is that there's really not a shortage. It just seems to be there is a misdirection or misappropriation or I even hate this word. People are being disingenuous about the shortage, and they're diverting what we have to pallets of food for the illegals that are coming in, and even sending some of that to overseas. Now, my brother, you and I have spoken about that. What is it that you're hearing about the baby food shortage?
I'm hearing the same thing from multiple sources. In fact, Cammack, one of the senators, congressmen, actually personally went to the border and saw not only one warehouse with pallets full of formula, but multiple warehouses with pallets full of formula. Yet the men and women that are protecting that border can't even go to Target and get baby food for their own babies. She went there personally and saw it. But then you got the folks back in D.C. saying it's not true. She went personally and said it is true. So, number one, it's absolute man-made, man. And the other thing is Abbott Laboratories in Michigan, I believe it is, they said there was a bacteria in their formula, so they put a moratorium on them and found out that the bacteria that they had 2 babies die was not the bacteria in Abbott's, but yet even though there's no match, the people in charge in D.C. have still shut Abbott down, not permitting them. So,
you and I were talking earlier, and you made a great statement. I wrote it down. I said something to the effect, "We're being played by politicians," and that leads me to I agree. I agree with that. We're being played by both parties, Democrat and the Republicans. Unfortunately, that they seem to want to remain in office more so than protect the community, the people that put them in office. And for me, that becomes really disheartening. I've got to put the little caveat here. I know not 100% of those in office are scuzzy people.
Sure.
But when will we learn that if we keep putting the same corrupt politicians in office, that nothing's ever going to change? What will it take for us to learn finally to get some good, God-fearing, Constitution-honoring patriots in office?
Maybe that's a great question. Really great question. I am probably overly optimistic, but I've said this for years. It won't be until our creature comforts are attacked. And maybe with gas being over $4 a gallon and milk and the 12%, 9% increase in food, 35% increase in used cars, our creature comforts have been hit. It may wake somebody up where they'll look up from their flat screen TV and realize something's wrong. I'm hoping that will awaken them to the need to do something.
Pastor, I never in my life would have imagined that this nation would have so quickly and willingly gone down the path of socialism as we have. And yet we just sort of wring our hands and wonder what we can do. And we look at, we talk about fake news and we look at the fake president, and I know I'm going to get complaints from people about that, but why are we allowing this to happen? We bellyache about it, but then we let leftists cancel us, and we think, well, we don't want to offend anybody, but they're attacking our Christian values and our Constitution beliefs. It seems like unending.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I think the lie is we have 350 million people. What's little old me going to do? I mean, what is one vote? What is one voice? I read this quote just recently. The best way to abdicate power is to believe you don't have any. Yeah. And I think a lot of Americans believe they don't have any power, but I think one voice spoken can influence so many more.
Amen.
So we got to get back to believing we can influence at least someone else. I think that's powerful. The vote matters. Look, we had in one of the elections, we had one person win by one vote for a position in that county. One vote. Right.
Yeah.
So
in the county where we live right now, one of the magistrates in the last election, at the end of the voting process, it was a tie. Tie. And they had to decide by a flip of the coin who went into the office. All right, in the last 3 minutes here before our break, let's transition very quickly about Roe versus Wade and the leak from the Supreme Court. And not only that, but the threats against the justices themselves.
Absolutely. Constitutional law indicates that threatening a judge is a crime. You can't influence the judicial process. It's unconstitutional. It's illegal. You can't threaten it with violence. But yet I don't see Democrat or Republican trying to arrest these young thugs, these Marxists. And look, there's a statement. I know that's not, hope I didn't offend anybody on your show, but something that the communist, socialists, and Marxists say is the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. Don't ever let a crisis go to waste. This is not about winning Roe versus Wade. This is about throwing away freedom in America. And they're just using this crisis to further the revelation. And they work on it 7 days a week while we just hopefully vote once or twice a year and think we're going to beat this. They're working at it all the time.
Yeah. And don't you see also, sadly, in the church, we'll say, well, let's just pray about that. I've seen pastors for years. They'll have their binder and they'll say, we have any prayer requests tonight? And they write them down and they'll say, Aunt Susie had ingrown toenails, and the pastor does the pastoral, oh, Lord have mercy. Oh, and we're praying. And I have no qualm about praying. We should pray. But in concert with prayer, there should be repentance. There should be renewal, should be seeking God. From what you see of the church today, and we've got about a minute, what do you think we can do, or what do you think is lacking with all this?
I think fear of man. I think the pulpit is plagued with the fear of man.
Great point. Great point.
Okay.
What does that fear do to us?
Oh, absolutely. It'll shut your mouth. It tried to intimidate me up until just a good number of years ago. And I thought, man, I'm going to cast caution to the wind. I want to start speaking on some of these issues that I'm told I'm not allowed to speak on, because I got tired of being handcuffed and gagged as a pastor by my fear of who might leave. But what I found out, Gary, I had very few leave and many come because they're hungry for truth. There was a survey done, and I'll be real quick. There's a survey done saying, what do you want to hear from the pulpit? And a majority of Christian Americans want to hear these issues discussed by their pastors, yet they're running from it like they're afraid of it. Yeah. They're not even following the demographical study.
Yeah, and I think it's a sad commentary for Americans, whether you're a pastor or not, but particularly it's even more so important. It's poignant, it's vital, that if pastors allow fear to overwhelm them, then the people that they say they love, they'll never hear the truth. Friends, we're talking with Pastor Bryon Mills here this evening, and we'll continue this program right after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back from that short break. Man, I am so glad you tuned in tonight to listen to the discussion that I've had with Pastor Bryon Mills, and we've talked about voting machines. We hit very quickly on critical race theory. We talked about Roe versus Wade, and I know that he and I both are praying that it is overturned. We spoke about the leak from the Supreme Court. We talked about threats against the integrity of the voting machines. And Byron, did I hit everything? Have I forgotten? There's so much we could talk about.
Gary, I think we have solved the world's problems tonight.
Hallelujah. Yeah, let's go have some coffee.
Yeah, sounds good.
But what I want to close up tonight on this segment here, we've got about 4 minutes. You were telling me about some positive things that you've seen happen within the life of your ministry and in your church from the pandemic. And let me tell you, the folks that are watching this, I believe that the pandemic, I know there's a COVID-19. I know that. I know that people have gotten sick. But let me tell you, I really believe there has been a manipulation of all of this. And let me make a point right here. This manipulation has been for the purpose of controlling how you vote and whether or not you do get to vote, but also to close and shut down the churches. All right. Now, Pastor, what's some of the positive things that you've seen happen? Because what the enemy has meant for evil and wickedness and darkness, God's light has been able to turn it around.
Absolutely. First of all, and I've said this to several, and I know you could say the same thing, I did not fear COVID for one split second, and I don't take credit for that. I believe God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. We didn't have in sanctuary services, I believe 2 or 3 weeks. And then I saw the handwriting on the wall and realized, wait a minute, this is not going in the right direction. So we gathered again, and I said, it's up to you guys whether you stay or go. So there was leadership that didn't create fear. Here's what's happened. We maybe lost a few people, but before the pandemic, our church was lethargic. And it didn't matter how hard we prayed or what we did or whatever. But now, coming on the other side of this, there are people coming that I've never seen, younger people, and I'm preaching as bold as I can, and they're coming and they're staying and they're exciting. Our worship has a life in it that it's never had before. We're seeing something, I guess it's this, where sin abounds, grace abounds much more. That's the only thing I can give credit for. And people realize that we're in dire circumstances, and I think they're turning to God to find some answers.
Yeah, I tell you what, I agree with that. I've seen so many positive things happen, especially as we've expanded our television outreach. Not only, and I really call this like a ministry. This is a news show, But I never want it to be news to such an extent that we don't give people the chance for a hope, and that they need hope within their life. There is hope. And Pastor, if you can take about 40 seconds or so and just express how people can find that hope, I would greatly appreciate it.
Sure. Listen, the bottom line is this. If you're looking to the world, to the government, even to your family or to your finances for a hope, you're looking in the wrong place. The hope that you're looking for is in Jesus Christ himself. He came, he died in your place. He rose from the dead. He conquered death. If he can conquer death, he can come into you and alongside of you and help you conquer anything else. And the real truth of the matter is Jesus is the way, he's the truth, he's the life. Hope comes through the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it's as simple as you opening your heart and saying, I make you Lord of my life, Jesus. I can't live hopeless anymore. Please live inside of me and give me that supernatural hope that I so need right now.
Amen. Pastor, thank you so much for those wonderful words. Folks, we want you to tune in with us every week right here on this channel. But if you can't find us on the channel, check us out on our YouTube channel. You'll see the information there on the screen. If you want to drop us a letter, there's a P.O. box there on the screen that you can write to us. We would love to hear from you. Pastor, thanks so much. I pray that God blesses you. Until next week, we would look forward to seeing you again. Thanks for watching this most recent episode. Click below the like button. Provide any comments that you like. Also, we will get back to you as soon as we can after you write to us at P.O. Box 39, Perry Park, Kentucky, 40363. Also, let us know if you like really good coffee, and we'll send that out to you as soon as we possibly can. What's the name of the coffee? Firebase.